I think what we want to have is a landscape where journalists can fight for their rights without fear of sanction.
New York-based international watchdog Human Rights Watch was recently in Doha to launch their 2013 report.
We're here in Qatar because this has become an important place in the world. The purpose of coming here is basically to document the problems that are here and to encourage positive change, a positive change that we're very hopeful to see.
The organisation has no representation in Qatar, but it has been monitoring the situation for migrant workers ahead of the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Although its coverage has improved in the last few months, a Human Rights Watch Middle East researcher pointed out other press freedom issues in Qatar.
The coverage of the migrant worker issue has been rather good, actually. Particularly Al Jazeera have really covered the issue when we released the report in June. They've done their own investigative work into the conditions of migrant workers. Domestic workers is an issue which they are interested in. Other issues relating to civil and political rights of citizenry, freedom of expression. I think Qatar's reputation as a centre for media freedom is perhaps being undermined by the draft media law, which would suggest that the country is not yet prepared to live up to the rhetoric, the progressive rhetoric on freedom of expression. We were able to see a copy of the draft media law. There were certain provisions which were of concern to us, I think particularly Article 53 of the draft media law, which provided for a serious fine, I think it was 1 million Qatari riyals, for anyone publicising material or news which damaged the interests of the state or of neighbouring states or regional allies. I think what concerns us about that is we have a double standard on freedom of expression, whereby Qatar-based journalists will be able to report on issues relating to the Arab awakenings, for example, in Egypt and Tunisia, but may not be able to do so when those issues are closer to home, either in Qatar or in its Gulf neighbours.
How does the media landscape compare to other neighbouring countries?
Qatar is Al Jazeera, obviously, so the landscape is far more advanced for a start. There are a lot of resources here dedicated to it. I think it's undoubted. I mean, the existence of the Doha Centre for Media Freedom is evidence of the commitment on one level to media freedom. So it is more advanced. The question now is, are they willing to take the next step and ensure that journalists' right to free expression and citizens' right to free expression is fully recognised. And in that regard, I think recent events are slightly concerning.
The lack of coverage surrounding the imprisonment of Qatari poet Mohammed ibn al-Dib al-Ajami has been a stain on journalism in Qatar. It was criticised by the Doha Centre for Media Freedom and the Human Rights Watch report.
The imprisonment of Mohammed ibn al-Dib violates his right to free expression. In terms of how it was covered here, I think it was disappointing that Qatari agencies didn't cover it to the same extent as foreign news agencies. I think coverage of that issue in Qatar could be an important factor in securing what we hope will be his release from an unfair charge.
As a Renaissance movement is embracing parts of the Arab world, is Qatar's civil society ready to ask itself where the country stands in terms of its own freedoms? If so, what will it take to guarantee the right to free speech in a nation constantly challenging itself to embrace modernity and globalization?
I would like to think that civil society organisations and Qataris in general would pay more attention to this issue. But at the same time, I mean, it is an issue which, with the Arab awakenings and with the effects of that being felt to some extent across the region, although less so in Qatar, to an extent I can understand why that issue is a little bit marginalised when citizens are focusing on their own civil and political rights. The rights of non-citizens tend to be seen as secondary. The media landscape can be free, I think, when journalists feel free to express their views to policymakers on the issues of freedom of expression and journalistic freedom. So in that regard, it's up to the authorities to demonstrate a true commitment to journalistic integrity and journalistic freedom by encouraging journalists to outline their views on how Qatar can truly be a centre for media and press freedom.